Hi everyone, Courtney here with Bionic Blaze Clothing, two-time cancer survivor and amputee. If you like my content, please like and subscribe. It's super helpful for me. I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys content that you enjoy. Today I wanted to talk about being disabled in the workplace. So there are obviously a ton of laws that prevent companies from discriminating against you, right? So I think that there's a lot to be said in that instance of, you know, if you're physically capable of doing the job, then you should be able to do it regardless of your disability. Obviously, if you have mobility issues, I would assume something where there's a requirement of lifting 50 pounds might negate your availability to actually be able to do that job. So there's obvious things like that that kind of prohibit disabled people in certain avenues, more physical work and things like that. I'm sure there's still a lot of discrimination. I'm not totally familiar with anything myself personally, but I wanted to kind of talk about the actual work environment that you're in as a disabled person. Is it accessible for you? Are you having to make certain adjustments in order to comply to whatever situation you're in? For example, I've been at my work for 12 years now, so it's one of those things where I have the ability to have a lot of say because I've been there for so long, and my work is really good about wanting to be accessible. So that's something that's like a really great thing that I get from being a part of the company I'm with. But there were certain things, like at one point there was this huge rain gutter, and every time it would rain it would leave this huge puddle like on the walkway to get in from my car in the disabled spot into the building. So I was forced to walk through this, and so I had to constantly think about what shoes I was wearing because my prosthetic can't get wet. So I complain, and it's also kind of a hazard to have this huge deep puddle to have to walk through, right? And I don't think anyone wants to walk around with wet shoes all day. So I brought it up, and I brought it up to maintenance, and I think I probably involved the local HR on that as well, and they were required to fix the situation, and so they had to do this whole underground situation in order to get the water to a place where it would actually drain correctly, which is probably a good thing to have anyways, because it's one of those things where they probably shouldn't have a puddle in the first place. It's probably a liability no matter what, if you're disabled or not. So it worked out for them on that instant. Another one is I am able to leave a wheelchair. I work in a warehouse, so there's a lot of like walking that you have to do. So I'm able to actually leave a wheelchair out there at all times, and just kind of have that for any times that I need to go super far. I use it pretty much daily, and I'm able to have that in whatever space, and they should be able to accommodate you in whatever mobility aids you may need in your own work, whatever that looks like for you. There's definitely not, I think a lot of people with mobility issues use crutches and wheelchairs and things like that, where you're needing to use your hands in order to get from point A to point B. The doors are not accessible, and I don't think that there's necessarily a law about that. They don't have, like, companies aren't required to have automatic doors. There was a big chunk of time where I had to walk on crutches, and it was really hard. It's really hard to open doors with crutches. When you're on one leg and you're on crutches and you need to open doors, you have to swing it open and like put your crutch down really quick. So that's always a huge pain. Another thing is, when I was in that situation, I would get inside, I would get in my wheelchair, and then I would just roll around the rest of the day. But a lot of people like to use the disabled bathroom. So after a while, I ended up having to have some confrontation with people and just be like, hey, because they kept doing it. That's why I say confrontation. Be like, hey, you're actually using a disabled bathroom, and it's literally the only bathroom that I can fit in with this wheelchair. Like, can you not do that? In the end, I involved HR just because it kept happening, and with lots of different people. Just some things you really have to advocate for yourself. I feel like I say that all the time in so many different scenarios. You can't be timid about that stuff. You have to advocate for yourself. Being disabled is a disability. Like, you have to be able to move throughout the world as easily as an able-bodied person, or at least close to as easily. And even just the factors of not having a automatic door is an issue. It's a whole thing. So I think that there's just some things that you need to remind yourself that you have the right to ask for what you need to ask for in order to make your day-to-day life easier. And especially at work, when you're spending 8 hours a day, like that's the perfect time to say like, hey, I actually need XYZ. And for the most part, everyone should be complying. I typically involve HR just because that makes things move a lot faster. Sometimes you involve people and they just don't understand. So I think it's just one of those things where you just immediately involve HR on it because they know the rules and they know the laws for the Americans with Disability Act for being in the workplace. But just make sure that your work has enough disabled spots. That was another thing. People started parking in the disabled spots and I was just like, hey, you can't do that. I know that they're empty a lot of the times, but like they kept encroaching. There was like one person and then the next day there was two people and I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna lose my spot here pretty soon. So just making sure that your work has enough disabled spot for how many parking spots they have. One of the things that I find at my corporate offices that is kind of a bummer is the meeting spaces and different areas are definitely not accessible. Those are a little harder for me to navigate on how to address them because it is one of those things of like, this is where it gets weird and tricky because it's like, I'm sitting here saying I should advocate for myself. And then in the next breath, now I'm saying I feel weird about bringing up XYZ. So there are certain meeting spaces that we have to meet to present the product, and it's not wheelchair space wide. There's like a ton of product everywhere. And I feel like I should say something, but then part of me doesn't want to rock the boat too much. But then when I'm there, it sucks. I feel embarrassed and I feel awkward and weird, and I shouldn't have to feel that way, and I know that. So I totally understand like not being able to advocate for yourself fully in those kind of instances. And I'm also of the mind of like, I don't know if I can really ask 60 people to be mindful of where they place their product. I don't know what that looks like. I probably should address it, but it's just, I don't go there often enough for it to be like, do I make a big deal out of this? But I'm the only disabled person out of the 60 people that are in this meeting. What if there was another disabled person and they couldn't even get through the aisles? Like, we're supposed to be able to see this product and everything. Like, of course I can get up and walk around, but what if there's someone that's in a wheelchair and they're not able to walk around? Then what? So I think it's just one of those things of trying to figure out how to navigate it, and it can be tricky, right? So definitely something I need to work on myself, obviously, too, I'm realizing, but I will say the vast majority of my company does a really great job of being aware and mindful. So I try and bring up things as best I can without rocking the boat too much. So I totally get if it feels weird to bring up like, hey, this would actually make my life easier. I think that's something as disabled people, we kind of, like, not all of us, but I know I don't want to stir things up and I don't want to cause people extra work or different things like that. But in the end, it will help you, it'll help me to be able to move about the day in a more efficient way, just like how everyone else does. In the workplace that I'm at every day, I'm always like, hey, like Courtney space, I always like, is this Courtney friendly? And so everyone's very, very mindful in my immediate workspace. And there's 25 of us, so everyone's like super great about being mindful in that sense too. But they kind of like, that's how they call it now. It's like, oh, is this Courtney friendly? So I think that that's pretty funny and pretty great too. Please let me know what you guys would like to hear about in the comments below. And again, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks, everyone.